Geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cats and kittens, comic book fans the world over, welcome back to another thrill-packed, information-filled, curiosity-fueled episode of Ask Chuck Dixon, where you get to ask me questions about what I do for a living. What I do for a living is I write comic books. Keep your eyes on the road as we take a question from Kia and Kurji. A lot of prominent comic book editors and writers have received weird things in the mail from fans. I once read that one time when Marvel killed off Howard the Duck, somebody sent them a dead duck in a box with a letter saying, "Why did you kill this duck?" On that note, what's the weirdest thing you've ever received in the mail, if any? I don't have those kind of fans. Can you imagine the stuff that Alan Moore must get in the mail, or requests he must get? There's certain kind of people that attract, odd responses to their work. I once said to John Ostrander, I didn't envy him his fan base because some of them were pretty weird. But can you imagine what people must send Alan Moore, or even more so Neil Gaiman? Because the fans are kind of out there. I think my fans are a lot more reasonable, dare I say normal. So you folks listening to me can congratulate yourself that you're not, you might be eccentrics, but not wildly eccentric. Now, probably the most impressive thing I almost got was I had a Green Beret write to me. He had been in Vietnam, and he loved my comics so much, he wanted to send me his Green Beret. And I hastily wrote back to him and said, no, please, 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 no. You earned that. I don't want that. I mean, I would be honored. It'd be really, really flattering and cool to have someone's Green Beret, but I didn't earn it. I did nothing. I'm just a silly comic book writer. I make violent stuff up. I don't actually get involved in any kind of violence. I'm not putting my life at risk the way this guy did, not only in combat, but in training. I mean, Green Beret training is crazy. Guys die in Green Beret training. And I wasn't about to accept it. And he very graciously understood. I held my manhood cheap. I wasn't about to take this guy's most prized possession just because I wrote a comic book he liked. I'm perfectly happy to keep on writing comic books he liked without that kind of honorarium. Jeffrey Moss. Hi, Chuck. I enjoyed your Space Force parody book. Not only was it funny, but the art was great, too. Any chance you would consider doing a follow-up book, maybe an Agents of Doge or something? That'd be fun. For those of you who didn't know about Trump's Space Force, when Trump, back in his first term, announced Space Force was officially going to be a thing, I just put out a call on Facebook and said, hey, who wants to do a Trump Space Force comic book with me? And Timothy Lim raised his hand. So I wrote it, he drew it, a bunch of other people worked on it, did a great job, and we actually made some coin off it. It sold pretty darn good. So there was an audience for it. Dave Dorman did this terrific retro cover. I think Graham Nolan did it. Yeah, Graham did a cover too, a variant cover. So it was a lot of fun to work on. Yeah, Agents of Doge would be kind of funny. That'd be kind of cool. Something to consider. Timothy, if you're listening, you want to do it? That's how these things happen. That's what I love about comics. MB. I write and draw my own comics. For fun, I wrote a one-shot story featuring Judge Dredd, Dick Tracy, and RoboCop. It was purely for fun, and I don't plan for anything to come of it. My question is, would these three properties in one story be too much of a legal nightmare to publish? Yeah, it would be, wow. It wouldn't be a nightmare for the lawyers. They'd love it. There's lots of billable hours here. And I'll tell you, just from my own experience, I bet you King Features, who own Dick Tracy, they'd love this. They like anything that brings Dick Tracy, into another, exposes Dick Tracy to a different audience or a new audience. RoboCop, I don't know what the ownership of RoboCop, I don't know where that stands. Is it Lionsgate, I believe, owns RoboCop now? I don't know. And then Judge Dredd. The Judge Dredd people will probably be the holdout. Because they can't seem to get out of their own way over there. Although I'm hearing rumors that Amazon might be doing a Judge Dredd series with Carl Urban by the guys who produced The Boys. That's kind of encouraging. I want a Judge Dredd TV series or more movies or anything. I don't care. Cartoon show. I want more Dredd all the time. Big Dredd fan. But yeah, it's probably fun to think of this story because it's kind of a crazy crossover, but I love crazy crossovers. But yeah, like I said, you'd never be able to make this happen. It's fun to dream about. Brandon Woodall. What exactly makes a story pulpy? The term pulp fiction originated from the late 19th and early 20th centuries, referring to stories published in pulp magazines across various genres. While pulp originally described the cheap paper these magazines were printed on, the term persists today long after the magazines disappeared. Given this, I find myself asking what defines a pulp story at its core, and I think pulp stories, to paraphrase P.G. Wodehouse, are just written by writers who just, sit down to write and just don't give a damn. They've got a word count to meet, there's money involved, and they just go nuts. So a pulp story has, to my mind, has some degree of the fantastic to it, maybe a little seedy, maybe a little tawdry, definitely lots of violence, sex, or at least the hint of sex in the stories. And, the men are tough, the women are tougher. That's what makes the pulp. There's absolutely no pretensions to literature. These guys that did the pulps and later on, the paperback originals, men's adventure stuff and westerns and all of the 70s, that's all pulp. It was cranked out in quantity, and some of it's good, some of it isn't, most of it isn't, but that's Sturgeon's law. 90% of anything is crap. So, but yeah, I think a pulp story today, if someone were to say to me, go pulp on the story, I would just go nuts. I would just think of the craziest, wildest concepts I could possibly think of. And if you've ever read old pulps from the 30s, they fit that bill. There's some nutty, crazy stuff. I used to read The Shadow and The Spider, when they redid them in paperbacks. But I think my favorite was G8 and his Battle Aces because the concepts were so crazy. The Germans raising giant, dinosaur-sized bats to attack attack the Allies, or zombie airmen, that kind of stuff. Just crazy stuff. To me, that's what makes a pulp story. And lots of purple prose, lots of outrageous hyperbole, and just really, really colorful language. That makes a pulp story. Jason Shepard. Remakes are a thorny issue for film buffs. Conventional wisdom is that a remake is inferior, but some beloved movies like The Wizard of Oz, The Maltese Falcon, Mark of Zorro, or Nosferatu are remakes. Is there a movie you think deserves a remake? Remakes are tough. There's some movies that should never be touched. Something like Casablanca or Lawrence of Arabia. Leave them alone. Don't do anything to them. We don't need reboots or sequels or reimaginings of classic cinema. You're just going to diminish the original and just come up with something pale and stupid. That said, classics like Wages of Fear, great French, adventure, jungle romance, tough guy flick, long considered a classic, transformed into Sorcerer by William Friedkin. And as much as I love Wages of Fear, Sorcerer is amazing. It's an amazing movie. And so, my initial reaction probably would have been, no, don't come up with a new story. Don't remake a classic of French cinema. But William Friedkin, he had a vision, and I can't argue with it. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of William Friedkins left out there in the world to do any kind of remakes like that, to actually not improve, but give their own interpretation of the same story. Now, some stories lend themselves. A Star is Born gets remade every single generation. Every generation has their Star is Born. I mean, the one in the 30s, the one in the 50s, the one in the 70s, and then there was one just recently with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga. So, you know, that's an easy one to bring back. But some shouldn't be touched. Now, movies, I think, deserve a remake. There's a movie from the, I guess, early 80s, maybe 80, 81, maybe earlier, called Under the Rainbow. And it's not a good movie, but the premise is terrific. You mentioned Wizard of Oz. Under the Rainbow is set during the filming of Wizard of Oz at the MGM Studios. And Chevy Chase plays an FBI agent assigned to the film production because they've gotten intelligence that one of the dwarves, now if you know anything about the Wizard of Oz, they hired dwarves from all over Europe to play Munchkins. The FBI learns that one of these dwarves is a Nazi saboteur. And Chevy Chase has to go, you know, undercover in the film world in order to find out which dwarf is the Nazi spy or saboteur. It's a great premise. The movie's awful. Absolutely, it's not funny, even for a minute. It tries so hard to be funny. It just comes off stupid. And but I think a really funny movie, a fun, lighthearted romp kind of flick could be made of that. And I think that's where you should go with remakes. You should remake things that didn't come up to snuff at the time they were made. You know, movies that had a great premise but didn't live up to it in a time period for one reason or another. And one of them is Damnation Alley. Damnation Alley is the most simple premise in the world. It's post-nuclear war. The whole earth is irradiated, except this one strip of land across the United States called Damnation Alley. And George Papard and J. Michael Vincent and I think Jackie Earle Haley's in it. And they, in order to survive, they got to get out where they are. And I forget why they have to do this, but they have to travel across the United States along Damnation Alley. It's based on a novel by Roger Zelazny. And it's got, you know, mutant ants and all kinds of craziness in it. And, of course, you know, wild nomadic tribes a la Mad Max before there was a Mad Max. And the movie is it's not good. The best thing in the movie is the vehicle, which if you're watching this, you can see the Landmaster. It's just an awesome vehicle, but the movie's not good. It's very uneven. A lot of the special effects are simply wretched. And the cast is doing the best they can, but it's junk. But it's got such a great premise. Certainly worthy of a remake. I mean, you know, rewriting this story to make it more compelling and more engaging and more exciting than the original would not be hard. Another one is Logan's Run. Logan's Run, you know, it's okay. It's a 70s movie. I would like to see it remade, and I would like to see them return to closer to the premise of the original novel. Now, if you know anything about Logan's Run or don't know anything about Logan's Run, I'm about to tell you. Logan's Run is set in a future where they're concerned about overpopulation, as everybody seemed to be back then. That didn't happen. And in order to battle overpopulation in these, you know, these enclosed enclave cities, you're only allowed to live to 30. And when your 30th birthday, they come and get you. There's this symbol in the palm of your hand. It turns color, and you have to go to the carousel. At the carousel, you die. And you know, Michael York and some other guy's name I can't remember. Richard Jordan. They play these cops who basically hunt down people who try to escape the system. And definitely worthy of a remake. Although I would make it closer to the novel. In the novel, the age of 21 was the cutoff date. And I think that would make for a much better movie. And, you know, could definitely be done. And wouldn't even have to be done on a huge budget scale. They did it in the 70s. I think you could you could phone this one in for about 10 million and make a hell of a movie. It's just a great suspense premise, and then jettison all the stupid crap the movie came up with. So, Jolly Green is here with a question. A while back, you had teased a new character named Black Warrant. He had a cool trench coat, mask, and a shotgun. Whatever happened with that? Well, it's in the works. I wrote it. I wrote 5 issues, but it's going to be published as a graphic novel. It's going to be like 150, 160-page graphic novel. And it is completed. The artist, we knew going in, the artist was going to take a while. He sort of got to this project in between other projects. And we knew we'd have to wait patiently, but as you can see, if you're watching this, the art's terrific. And what Black Warrant is I was asked by Archaven Comics to, in the middle of the debacle where Marvel basically pulled the rug out from under Frank Castle, Vox Day approached me and said, would you want to write your own Punisher character, like totally unfettered, a Punisher character? And I said, well, let me think about it, if I can come up with a new take. And I did come up with what I think is a new take on the urban vigilante genre. I know I do a lot of this with the Horsemen and Levi Cade and everything else, but each time I do it, I try to give a new twist, a new emphasis to it. And I have to say, of all of the vigilante justice genre stuff I've written, this one's the meanest. This one is trouble. This story's dangerous. This is crazy time. I really loved writing it, but it has a different take, a different slant. It'll keep you guessing right up to the end. I won't spoil it in any way, of course, but it's coming soon. It'll be crowdfunded, probably in the next couple of months, because it's almost complete. The artwork is almost complete, and I don't want to jump ahead of things, but there's some interest in ancillary rights for this property already, if you know what I mean. And I think you do. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Jason Shepard again. I think you might be the only writer who has written Conan for both comics and prose. Congratulations. I think so. I never really thought about that. When you discuss Conan writers, there's Robert E. Howard, then there's everyone else. I'm curious if you ever read any of the other authors who wrote Conan prose. There are some really good ones: L. Sprague de Camp, Robert Jordan, Carl Edward Wagner. Aside from yourself, do you have any favorite non-Howard Conan writer? I gotta say no, because I read Lynn Carter stuff and L. Sprague de Camp, and what was that guy, Bjorn Nyborg, and I wasn't impressed. I never read any of the Robert Jordan. I looked at the thickness of the Robert Jordan Conan novels and thought, I don't think that's Howard. He would never have written anything that long. Conan is not a fantasy character like other fantasy characters. Like Conan by the pound. Now, Carl Edward Wagner, I probably should read some of them because I really like his stuff. I read all of his Kane short stories and novels and such, and he was good. He was real good. So I should probably check it out eventually. Carl Edward Wagner. I don't know. That had to be a pseudonym, right? What a better name for a guy to write Conan. Certainly better than Chuck Dixon, which doesn't really, to me, sound right. It sounds like Conan's being written by the guy that does the sports at 11 o'clock on Channel 2. Twin spin. Actually, Jason, I think you had more than a twin spin. I might have missed one for you there. Okay, Jason Shepard again. He asks, how do you feel about poetry? When I was in school as a creative writing major, I looked down on poetry. Part of it was youthful arrogance. Part of it was an opinion that you should just tell your story. Part of it was that the poets I knew, there were few things as pretentious as a young poetry student. You gotta agree there. So how about you? Do you have a favorite poet, or at least a favorite poem? When I was a young spud in junior high, I'd like to say I was never pretentious, but I was kind of interested in E.E. Cummings, and E.E. Cummings was kind of an absurdist poet. He didn't punctuate, didn't use capitalization, and I didn't understand any of his poems, but what I liked was his use of language and onomatopoeia, which means words that sound like what they are. Words that are basically sound effects. I remember Down in Dingley Dell, and a poem of his began that way. And Down in Dingley Dell kind of, presents an image in your head. I don't know what image presents in your head, but it presented images in mine. So I did read a lot, and he sort of had like a weird sense of humor. At least I hope he was trying to be funny. But I know nothing about the guy, except, and I haven't read any in way too long. But I remember being impressed with his language, his use of language. I guess, I'm a Philistine. I like Rudyard Kipling. I like Gunga Din. At one time, I had memorized Gunga Din, and I can still quote a lot of it. You can talk of gin and beer when you're quartered safe out here, and you're sent to penny fights and overshot it. But I don't remember the whole thing. Maybe I'll go back, it's a battle of Alzheimer's, go back and re-memorize Gunga Din. But, that's probably my favorite poem. Triple spin. Jason is back. I think he would earn a quadruple spin. I lost count there. Jason Shepard, bonus question, shamelessly stolen for Steve Shive's YouTube channel. Who wins in a street fight, Edgar Allan Poe or Bram Stoker? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Edgar Allan Poe was not exactly known as a physical specimen, and Bram Stoker, I think he was like a literary agent, he was a critic, theater critic. So neither one of these guys were exactly He-Men. and didn't Poe have like tuberculosis or something? I mean, brilliant, brilliant, both of them in their own right. But I don't think anybody would be crowding around to see the two of these go at it in fisticuffs. Maybe pistols at 20 paces. Oh man, and then my money would be on Poe because he was smaller. He was a smaller target. Commandant VHS. He asks, I had the faulty assumption that MASH was the only Korean War movie that existed. After searching the internet, I came to find that many Korean War movies were made in the 1950s and 60s. I have no idea which ones are good. I could use your help finding the top 3 movies to watch. Well, in my opinion, Pork Chop Hill. You can't go wrong. It's a manly war flick about GIs try to take a hill, held by the either the North Koreans or the Chinese, and Gregory Peck, a bunch of other big stars. Woody Strode steals the movie. He steals the movie as basically he plays a coward. He doesn't. You can't imagine Woody Strode playing a coward, but he does a terrific job, and he has this tremendous. To me, his is the main character arc in the movie. He kind of represents an everyman. The soldier's first time in combat, you're freaking terrified, and then you've got to work to get over that. You've got to find a reason to get up and fight. I mean, it's a good movie. Probably shot in Southern California. And largely, I mean, it's no wonder you thought that MASH was the only Korean War flick, because the Korean War, they call it the Forgotten War for a reason. It only lasted 2 years. We lost a lot of men. It was a brutal, vicious war for the most part, and engaged a lot of troops from all over the world, because it was supposedly a United Nations action, even though the Americans did the bulk of the fighting. Another good one is The Hunters. It's a Korean War aviation flick with Robert Mitchum and Robert Wagner, I think. It's based on a terrific novel. And it's a good one. It's a good one. If you've ever seen the movie, now it's slipping my mind. The John Milius movie about the aircraft pilots in Vietnam War. That movie owes a lot to this one. Boy, why can't I think of that damn movie? Anyway, Willem Dafoe in it, and Brad Johnson, Roseanne Arquette, Danny Glover. You're all screaming out the name at me now, but I can't hear you. So anyway, the Hunters, Mitchum, usual, terrific job. And the air war in Korea was pretty cool stuff. Very cool stuff. You know, MiGs versus F-86 Sabre jets and Panther jets and all that jazz. And of course, had the full cooperation of the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Navy and all that. But pretty cool movie. Another one, which a lot of you may never have heard of, is A Hill in Korea. And it's got, I think it's Stephen Boyd in the lead. It's about British troops in Korea. And it's a great small unit action film. And it puts across, I don't know where they filmed this. They filmed in some desolate place. It does look like Korea. Like, you know, the most rural parts of Korea. And it's basically about, you know, a small unit, you know, and they get, you know, disoriented and end up biting off more than they can chew. They're facing a Chinese force much larger than themselves, and they draw back to a Buddhist temple and basically fortify it to defend themselves. And it's got a young Michael Caine in it, in a small role, and a young, man, my memory is shot today. It's got another really good actor in it, Irish guy, who was in Jaws. Oh man, I'm blowing it today. So I'll remember by the end of the show, I promise. So anything, I'm gonna leave you with one more thing. Man, it's killing me. I can't remember the name of that actor. It's one of my Robert Shaw. Damn it! Robert Shaw is also in A Hill in Korea. In a small role. Okay, one more thing. A couple of weeks ago, I tried to describe pantomime, and a whole bunch of you wrote to me and said, Chuck, I still don't understand what pantomime is. So I'm going to take another shot at it. Pantomime is a live theater children's show. They're really popular in England. You know, they probably have them, you know, but there's probably an Easter pantomime still running. They're usually at Christmas and Easter time, and they're made for school children. And they're silly, and there's music, usually, you know, borrowed pop music. They don't write new music for these things. And there'll be actors that the audience knows from television. I think Canada does pantomime. I'm not sure. Any of you listening from the Great White North, let me know. But I think pantomime is also a tradition in Canada, being that it was or is, I'm not clear on that, a British Commonwealth. But, you know, there's usually actors from TV or pop stars from a generation before, and there's lots of singing and dancing and craziness and audience interaction and a lot of drag, a lot of men dressed as women, which makes me wonder why it didn't catch on here in recent years, since there's a portion of our population that's so insistent that children be exposed to men dressed as women. It's a wonder they didn't choose pantomime instead of, you know, storybook hour. Because pantomime would have gone down easier. Because at least it's theater. So, you know, kids were off from school and their parents or uncle or aunt, you know, or older siblings would take them on down to the theaters in the West End or local theaters, and they would see these live shows and, you know, be encouraged to interact with the audience. Probably the most famous pantomime that you know as an American, I'm speaking strictly to my fellow Americans, is Peter Pan. Peter Pan was a novel written by J.M. Barrie, but it was also a pantomime. And it was, you know, and you know, as we know, Peter Pan was played by a woman, so there was, you know, an element of cross-dressing involved, traditionally always played by a woman. And if you know anything about if you've ever seen a production of Peter Pan, they don't fully, in the United States, when they do a production of Peter Pan, they're always bringing it back to Broadway. they'll do a full production, but they don't do the full pantomime. And really, the only remnant left over from the pantomime is clap for Tinkerbell. When Tinkerbell is supposedly dying, the audience is encouraged to clap their hands for Tinkerbell to bring her back to life. And a lot of pantomime was like that. A lot of pantomime was like that, asking the audience to become involved with the action, to affect what was going on stage. And I thought about it. I thought, well, the closest thing to pantomime that most Americans would recognize is Shrek. Shrek is very much a pantomime in that it takes established fairy tales, stories we're all familiar with from childhood, traditional stories, sort of stands them on their head and makes them crazy with lots of music and colorful action and, just sort of hyperactive stuff going on. So I think Shrek is the closest thing we've ever had to a pantomime in the United States. Now, before we go, I got to remind you, Zalen, Joe Bennett and I created Zalen for Rippaverse. He's still out there. You can still order it. It's the badass space-going cosmic hero of the Rippaverse, and I know you're going to dig it. Also out there as well, Horseman #1, first of a ongoing series of the Horsemen. Once again, Joe Bennett, my primary job at Rippaverse is to keep Joe Bennett busy. It's the greatest job in the world. Love working with Joe. So Horseman is still out there for ordering, 4 variant covers and all kinds of tchotchkes and a really, really cool poster, t-shirts, all the rest. So you might want to head over to Rippaverse and check that out. I will provide the links here with the video. And it's from your good friends at the Rippaverse. Like a good neighbor, Rippaverse is there. Hey, if you want to get a hold of me with questions, suggestions, ask me once again about pantomime. For those of you who didn't understand my second shot at an explanation, contact me at brunobookstore@gmail.com. brunobookstore@gmail.com is the most reliable way to reach me with your questions, suggestions, and all the rest. I want to thank everybody. Terrific questions this week. As always, I have the most thoughtful and, as I said earlier, normal fans in comics. So, until next time, thanks for listening, thanks for watching and liking and subscribing and all the rest. And I will